Okay, people, welcome to the third episode of the Anomalous pod. I'm joined again with the one and only Oscar Knight. Oscar, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
Good. That's good to hear. And today we're actually joined by a very special guest. She has had a very interesting life. She has been a musician, a single mother, a spiritual healer, a care worker, a first-class student of creative writing and English language, and now I would say she is sort of a new age journalist. And in fact, she is the origin of me. She birthed me 17 and a half years ago. It is my mum, Rebecca. Mum, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you guys. Really nice to be here with you today.
Did you like
Did
that?
you script that?
I had a rough idea where I was going, yeah, but
That was far too good.
I think it was
Yes, I've got a lot to live up to now, haven't I?
good. No,
With
this is
that
good though.
intro.
This is good though, because obviously I think out of everyone in the world, I know you and me, you're the closest person to me in my life, but I think today I might learn some things that I don't know, so it's going to be interesting.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting. I have no idea what you guys are going to ask me. So,
Well, I'm going
yeah,
to start somewhere, and we'll just see where it goes.
yeah.
Um, I want to start with your spiritual healing work because that's the thing
Mm,
I'm interested in.
mm.
And I think this is a question that's putting you on the spot slightly, but I just want to see what you would say. And that's if you had to sort of summarize what you do in that way, in sort of like a paragraph, a couple of sentences to someone who doesn't know, what would you say?
I would say that we are electromagnetic beings and that we have a physical body, but we also have energy bodies within us. You know, we are electrically powered actually as beings, and that I work with those subtle energies and with the energy systems of the body, and not just of the body, but of the universe, kind of thing. Because we're all everything is energy. That's how I see it. Um, it's a difficult question to answer, really, and I would say also that my answer has changed would be different if you'd asked me 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I've been doing this sort of work for 23, 24 years, and I've been learning all the way through too how it works because it's one of those things, isn't it, which people try to rationalize why healing works and how it works, but often when people ask me that in the past, I've kind of swerved it and said, oh, I don't really know. It just, it's just something I do. But deep down inside, I know that I'm working within energy systems. And these days, I kind of look at it in a quantum way, which gets a bit deep and complicated. But basically, I'm working with energy systems that we have in our bodies. And I'm either moving energy in or taking energy out or jump starting the energy of the body, a bit like a flat battery in a car. You need another car to jump it. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I've learned so much in those 24 years anyway that and I'm still learning. I'm learning all the time. So that's
But
not a very quick paragraph. That's a
no,
long
it's
waffle, but
fantastic.
it's a difficult question to answer, really.
I think that was fantastic.
Yeah,
I
that was very good.
I
Thank
find
you,
it
guys.
really interesting that you said like even your idea of it has evolved throughout the years.
Definitely. And the way that I've worked has evolved throughout the years, When I started out, it was very much I saw the person, um, I'd put my hands on them. So if someone had a bad knee, I would what I call go in, which is where I just go into this space in myself. And then I would put my hands on their knee, or well, actually, I usually start on the head and finish on the head. But I'd work wherever I'm shown to work on the body. And as time's gone on, I mean, these days I rarely actually see people physically. I do a lot of my work distantly, which has been very helpful during lockdowns and things. But so the way I've worked has evolved over the years. I've sort of learned quite a lot of shamanic stuff 10, 15 years ago, and I've kind of combined that in with my work. So, I think when you work in these sort of areas, you are learning and evolving at the same time. You can't not.
Mm. I think well, that's like the best things in life. You're always learning. I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's the adventure of it, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And if you think you know it all, well, that tells me that you don't.
Yeah.
Because, nobody knows it all, you know.
Wow. Yeah, there's quite a lot to digest there. It's interesting. My question would be sort of like, obviously it's evolved throughout the years, but when was the moment where it sort of started? Had you always known, like even as a kid, that these things, or as a teenager or as a young adult, was there a moment, was there an experience that you had, or was it something that you sort of always had in the back of your mind but hadn't really realized until a certain point? Like what was the beginning?
I think I was sort of born with my ability, my gifts, or whatever you want to call them. But I was born into quite a religious family, so I think I kind of, it was latent, you know, it was kind of in there. When I got to about 12 or 13, and we used to have sleepovers, as you know, like, you know what girls are like, teenage girls or whatever. And my friends used to, I used to go into trances, and they used to ask me questions. So it's a bit like I'd been hypnotized. And they used to ask me silly questions, and I used to give them the answers. And one of my friend's mums found out about that and was very unhappy and took me to see a white witch. And she shut everything down in me and said, "You're too young, you don't understand what you're doing, and you know it's dangerous. What you're doing is dangerous because you're leaving your body and you're therefore open to, you know, other stuff." So she shut it all down in me, and it's not unusual if you've got abilities for them to kind of start to show during puberty anyway, which is, I think, was what was happening with me. But then I went to India when I was 18, and things were kicked off there, really. I met a man who came and sort of spoke to me over a period of a week or so, told me lots and lots of stuff, and kind of opened me back up again. And it was quite a kind of violent opening. It was baptism of fire, I would call it. And so from then, from 18 to 28, I had all this knowledge and I had all this energy and was having all these experiences, and I didn't really know what to do with them. I didn't know where to direct it. I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to, I didn't know how to. It's like having a car and you can start the engine up, but you don't know how to use the pedals, so you can't go anywhere. It was a bit like that. And then when I was 28, I'd been ill. I got ill over those 10 years, just kept getting sicker and sicker. And when I was 28, I met a man who healed me completely. And he took me under his wing, basically, and said, "Do you realise that you're a healer?" And I was like, "No." But I worked with him. He showed me the ways in, is the way that he describes it. Because you can't really teach someone to heal. You can just show them kind of how to direct the energy and what you're doing. But then, so I worked with him for about a year and a half. And then by that stage, I was already seeing people at home. I've never advertised. You know, you're only as good as the last person you've worked on, really. People pass your number around. And, you know, if you've helped them and they meet somebody that's got the same thing they had, they're going to say, "Oh, go and see this woman," you know, blah, blah, blah. So it kind of, and at the beginning, I was terrified. I mean, for the first 2 or 3 years, every time someone was coming around, I'd think, what if it doesn't work? You know, what if nothing happens? What if the energy doesn't come through? And it took me years to kind of trust that it's always there, you know. And the other thing is, when I get messages for people, when I'm working on them, I do see things. And I used to keep all that to myself. And I've learned over the years that those messages are for the person I'm working on, that I need to tell them because they might not make any sense to me, but they will make sense to that person. And also, you know, to trust that I'm being given something because it needs to be shared, and just to have more confidence. So it took me a long time to believe in what was happening, because I never thought I was going to be a healer, you know. I was working in the music industry all through my 20s, and, you know, if anything, I was trying to deny it, you know, trying to deny what I've been told in India, because I was young and I just thought, well, no, I'm not, that's not me, you know.
And we don't necessarily live in a world that's going to be really accepting of that kind of thing.
Well, back then, I mean, when I came back from India, that was 1988. I went in 87, came back in 1988. It was Thatcher's Britain. It was one of the most materialistic times, you know, if you mentioned crystals, people would laugh at you. So it's definitely got easier over the years. But at that time, yeah, I was teased anyway, because of the way that I am. But it's got easier and easier. And in fact, now I love it because I can speak so freely. People are so much more open to the alternative, you know. And more people do use healers. So it's got much easier as time's gone on.
Wow.
What made you want to go to India in the first place? Was that kind of like a calling, so to speak, or did it kind of just happen?
Well, it's interesting actually, Oscar, because I had a very good job. I was working at Shepperton Film Studios. You know, it's kind of like, wow, you know, you're on the beginning of this great career. And I had a motorbike because I used to bike it into to where I worked, and so three things happened. One was that my grandmother died, who I was very close to, and she was actually the first sort of person that died that I was, you know, my first bereavement, if you like. I got made redundant from my job, which was a real shock, and also my mum got nicked. And that all happened in the space of about a month, and I felt as if I'd just lost so much, you know. And I don't know where it came from, but I just literally said to, you know, my boyfriend at the time, I'm going to go to India. And he said, I'm going to come with you. So I don't know where it came from. It's very odd, but I look back and think, with what happened to me in India, if it had happened in this country, well, it couldn't have happened in this country. I probably would have been sectioned. But because I was in India, and this guy, I mean, he blew my mind. But in India, you know, you've got that freedom to, well, people are more open and more spiritual.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I was supported, and you know, I was taken to an ashram for a few days to meditate and chill out, and I was taught to meditate and lots of things. I think it was just like that was where I had to be opened back up again. Because it wouldn't have been very good to do that here. But I don't know why I went to India, Oscar. And it's, you know, I look back and think that's so weird that, you know, I lost my job and all of that, but why India? And it's so far away from home, and I was young, you know. But I think that's just where I was meant to be. And I do believe in fate and destiny. And I think that, you know, I don't know who that man was that I met. I've got my theories about it, but he knew everything about me. You know, he sat down and knew my name and everything about me. So it was a very weird, very, very weird experience.
Hearing that.
Huh?
Got goosebumps hearing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so he was an amazing guy. I'm not going to speculate about who he was, but he seemed to just turn up, do all that, and then disappear again. And for a long time, I felt a bit abandoned, really, because, you know, I would have liked to have spent more time with him or talked to him again. And obviously, I've never had that opportunity. But everything he told me came right as well, because he told me certain world events that were going to happen. And at that time, there was three major things that he told me. One was that the Berlin Wall was going to come down. The other was that there was going to be an end to apartheid in South Africa, and that Nelson Mandela was going to be freed and become president. Well, at that time, all of those things seemed really unlikely. And within a few years, they had all come about. So I think he did that to show me that, you know, he was the real deal. And therefore, the other things that he told me about would also come to pass, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So...
there's one thing you said there about, like, seeing it as it was fated that you went to India and all that. And I think I would agree. And I think, would you say the same for, like you were saying, you were sort of had this sickness throughout your 20s when you were trying to repress this gift that you had and have a normal life. That sickness was also something from the universe telling you that that wasn't what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think totally. I was suppressing who I really was, and I think any suppression Eventually you will get ill in the physical body, it will manifest. But also, I think, how else would I have ever come to healing than by being healed myself? You know,
True.
I think that I needed to get really ill and go through all of the normal channels, doctors and all of that, which I did. And they basically said there was nothing that they could do for me when I got to about 25, 26. And I actually decided then, oh, I've done with doctors. I'm going to do this myself. But it took me 2 years of, you know, I went to different healers, and I would get better for a little. I'd have an improvement for a few months, but then it would come back, you know, and it was a bit like that. So I was making movements in the right direction with it, but it wasn't until I met Doug that he healed me in one hit, and it was miraculous. And I think, you know, then he, as I say, he sort of took me on and taught me. And I just think, how else would I have ever met Doug? I wouldn't have unless I'd been ill, you know. And even then, it took a few years of you know, different types of healing and different people before I actually found him. And definitely another fated event, you know, definitely.
Wow. Yeah, I feel that. I feel like everything that happens to us has some kind of like reason to be there on the overall path, even if it's very difficult. Really, I think it's the universe, or whatever you want to call it, steering you to where you're supposed to go.
Absolutely. And it's the difficult things that make us grow and teach us the most, you know. So when we have challenges like that, you know, that's actually probably when we're being shown or given something really good. But it's wrapped up in a sort of trauma, you know.
Mm. So how were you in India for multiple months?
No, it wasn't there that long. Probably about 4 months in all. And I would have been there longer, but I got ill again because when Sean left, he said for me to go home, and I'm naughty, so I was like, I don't want to go home, so I stayed, and I came off a motorbike, so I had quite a bad injury on my leg, which went very septic, and also I got amoebic dysentery, which is not good. So I had to come home. I was forced to come home. So, but I would have stayed longer. But you know, I think it was one of those things, a job done. You've got to go home now, and so if you don't do what you're told, you do get your bottom smacked. You know, so yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's mad. I think, like, to me, I think there's some like romantic idea in my life of like, I'd love to go traveling either on my own or with like special people to like the East and go and have like an experience like that. Because I think, to me, from my perspective, that seems like the sort of the catalyst of your whole life, really.
Yeah, it was a massive turning point in my life, and it was huge. And I feel like, yeah, I don't really have any answers as to why that happened the way it happened, but it was definitely, I feel like that's when everything was switched on in me, was when I went to India. It all sort of came in, and it was quite difficult to control at first because I was just reading energy off everybody, and it's a bit like listening to, you know, there's 5 people in the room. It's like having 5 radios on, all on different stations, you know. So you have to learn. I had to learn to sort of control what was going on, and so that I can sort of function in the world without looking like a complete nutcase. So yes, it's like I said, it's like having a really amazing car and not really knowing how to drive it. But you know, you've got to keep the revs at a reasonable pace and not thrash the engine, and you know, not start driving it and crash into something. So it took a while. It took a while for me to even make sense of what had happened in India. You know, for a long time I just thought, well, I'm obviously a bit mad.
Well, and especially, well, like, it's not like you could have just, you know, gone into a cafe in town and just said to people, "Oh, you had this crazy experience," and they just accept it as normal. Like, I bet in a way you had to take it on your own, really, because things are so taboo and out of the.
Yeah, I mean, I told a few people. I mean, you know, my friend Steve, he's very, very open and spiritual. And I met him not long after I came back from India. And I still say to him now, you know, I owe you my sanity, because sometimes you only need one person to understand and believe you for you to think, yes, this is valid. If you've got nobody in the world that hears you and understands what you're saying, it's very lonely. But yeah, Steve, I did have a couple of really good friends that, you know, that were spiritual and I could talk to, but few and far between. More now, much more now. But you know,
we're going that way, like, you know, I think definitely on a whole global level, it's becoming more accepted, these kind of things. And I think even if people don't fully believe it, they're not like completely shutting it down. They might be skeptical, but they won't.
Yeah.
You know, section.
And there's more sort of you know, more conversation, as in, even if they don't really believe you, they won't ridicule you. They will talk to you about it, you know.
Here's a question: do you think, like, maybe in me and Oscar's lifetime, that your kind of medicine, your kind of healing, be like as prevalent as normal healthcare is now? Along, you know, will it be alongside it? Will it overtake it, or will it still always be like secondary? What do you think about that?
I think the world's changing right now, and I think, if anything, the last few years, what everyone's been through, lots of people are realizing that there are alternatives to big pharma, and that maybe big pharma isn't as honest as people have thought in the past. I think energy healing is very much coming into being, and I think what I see in the future really is a situation where we have sort of more traditional orthodox medicine for trauma, i.e., when you've had an accident, you know, A&E, that kind of thing. But I think there'll be a lot more preventative stuff, so that people will be using energy healing, and also diet and nutrition is huge. And the use of supplements and things like that, which are just played down massively by big pharma. So yeah, I do think that the whole kind of monopoly of medicine is actually cracking up and coming down right now. I think the narrative at the moment, a lot of people are questioning what's been recommended in regards to the pandemic, and they are that's almost like revealing it. Do you know what I mean? It's revealing the sort of hit and miss with a lot of medicines, and that there are other ways. There are other ways, you know. If you think, when a doctor is being trained, they do 7 years, right? And in that 7 years, I think they have 1 day where they cover nutrition and food. That's it. Yeah. So they're trained by the pharmaceutical companies to treat people with pharmaceuticals. You know, they're not actually trained in the body's systems, you know. And if you eat well and your environment is not full of toxins, you're not likely to get ill, you know. A lot of sickness is to do with the very toxic environments that we live in, and, you know, stress and all of that as well. So, you know, popping pills doesn't, you know, we need to look at the root cause. And with healing, you look at the root causes. So you're not treating the symptoms, you're looking for the root cause, and then you pull the root cause, you know, you pull the root out. So I think I think as we move forward over the next sort of 20 years, I think it'll be that the two will work in tandem together. That's the ideal thing, is you've got medicine as we know it now for trauma, accidents, you know, where people need a surgery, but that when people become ill, that it's a much more holistic approach at first, and also preventative, you know, eat well, keep yourself detoxed, and then you're not going to get ill, you know. So I think good things have come out of what's gone on over the last few years, and that good thing is people questioning, you know. So yeah, I see it changing quite you know, quite dramatically over the next couple of decades, for sure.
I feel from a personal perspective that balance has been useful, because like the surgery that I had was necessary to put my knees back together, but you know, the great amount of healing that you've given me over my lifetime has been great for pain relief.
Yeah.
And we're all just being able to function better, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when you were quite young, we were offered gabapentin for your pain, but we never used any painkillers because I just used to work on you when you were in pain. I don't know about you, Oscar, but it's kind of like when you're a kid and you're being offered quite heavy drugs.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, I did take a lot of heavy drugs. I did get offered gabapentin, but it had no real effect. It didn't stop the pain I had. But
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry,
but
go on.
complex regional pain syndrome is like off the scale pain, so I can understand you would have tried anything
Yeah.
to get you out of that pain. But generally, with you, Joel, you've always been treated with both orthodox and unorthodox stuff, and the combination, I think, is why you've come so far. So I think they work really well in tandem.
Yeah,
They've just got to make friends and have a cuddle, and then they can work together very nicely.
a lot of things in life could be solved by making friends and having a cuddle.
Absolutely, it's the solution to everything is to make friends and have a cuddle. Indeed.
Yeah. I want to ask an interesting question, right? Because I think we've touched on this before, but not like fully. So like you say like everything that's happened in your life you think has been kind of fated in some way. So then, what are your thoughts on like free will? Do you think we do have a decision with what we do, or do you think our destination is determined and we work out how to get there, or do you think it's all not under our control and we're just like passengers?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think when we come here, we have certain things which are fated and they're written. That like when we come here, we've agreed, okay, that's going to happen. That's going to happen. I'm going to meet that person. That's going to cause that to happen. And we have kind of events, a bit like the India thing, and then meeting Doug 10 years later. And, those were written in before I was born. But then in between those things, we absolutely have free will. So we can try to change our destiny and our course, but those fated things will still happen. Of course, we have free will. That's you can't be on a learning journey if you haven't got free will. But it's a bit like when I'm reading tarot cards, for example. You've got major arcana cards, and you've got minor arcanas, and so the major arcanas are the fated things, and the minor arcanas are the things that you can influence and change. So that's where your free will is in action. So for me, yes, there are certain things that are destined, like my children, for example. I think were destined as well. Those sorts of big things, they're written in before you come here. But in between those things, you have free will. Because if I say to people when they're having a hard time in life, if the doors keep slamming in your face, it's because you're not on the. You've taken a little bit of you've diverted off a good path with your free will. So you've got to go, well, these doors keep slamming in my face. Everything's going wrong. So have a look at what you're doing and maybe take a different path or direction. Because when you're on the right path, the doors kind of open and things flow very easily. But we do have free will. We have both. We have things that are written in, fated events in life, and in between of those, we have free will, and we choose sort of how we get there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that balance is nice because it's not nice to think that we have no control, but I think free will within a certain bandwidth is good.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't want to make I like the idea that some things are set out for me, and I also like the idea that I can sort of decide how I get there. It's a good balance. I know.
Yeah. And you've got to be able to have free will. You've got to be able to make decisions that and because I think there's instant karma a lot in life. If you make a bad decision, there's consequences from that, and likewise if you make a good decision, there's consequences from that, and that's the whole free will thing, and that's sort of learning. If we have free will, we're not learning, are we? We're not taking responsibility for what we're doing, and we're not gonna kind of
program.
Yeah. So I think it's a bit of both, actually. I think things are fated and we also have, a huge amount of free will.
Because without the ability to make choices, we don't really grow. And I think growth is really the closest idea I have to the meaning of life. Really, is growing and learning. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. And the more you know yourself, the better your life, the happier your life is, and also sort of knowing who you are. And I don't mean that in a kind of, knowing your name and where you're from. I just mean what you're about and why you're here. Because there's a lot of people who just have no idea why they're here and they're a bit lost. A lot of people don't like looking at their shadow, and that's the stuff that we need to look at, and that's the stuff that needs healing actually. And the more work you do on yourself, really, and the more you deal with your own shadow, and the shadow is constantly there, but that's how you grow. You grow from taking on board who you really are and what you're about, and admitting, yeah, I'm a moody cow in the mornings, and whatever.
Yeah.
But and just being at peace with who you are. None of us are perfect. We weren't supposed to be perfect. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need to be here.
Life
We
would be
are,
shit.
yeah. I always say we're imperfectly perfect. We're supposed to be imperfect. So, it's also realizing that that we all make mistakes, and that we all do things that we look back on and go, oh my goodness, what the hell was I up to there? But that is how we grow, and most growth is pretty painful. I think when I've had the hardest times in my life and I've reached down into the depths of myself and depths of my own darkness and despair, when you come back from things like that, you feel invincible and so much stronger, and that whatever life throws at you, you can survive it and take it. So some of the hardest times in my life have been, in a way, some of the best times in my life, looking back.
100%.
I think we can both talk to that.
Definitely.
Yeah, you guys have really been, for how old you are, you two have had experiences most guys your age have not had. But I think you're both mature for that, and you're also, you're very rounded human beings for the ages that you are, and that's because of what you've been through.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's amazing that really, if you want to change your life, if you want to change something about your daily existence, you actually have to go inside rather than change something outside of you.
Yeah, if you want to change your life, you have to change yourself. Yeah.
Paradox.
Really. Yeah, it is a paradox, but it's also like it's also like taking responsibility, because we create our own life really by the choices that we make, and it's kind of taking responsibility for the fact that it isn't something out there that's making you unhappy. It's something in here, and that is again looking deep inside and looking at the shadow self, and that's a lot of people avoid that. They don't want to look at that. But that's where the true healing comes in, and true happiness is found,
And if people want to do that, if people want to go inside and change parts of themselves, how do you think they do that? Do they have to do it, through meditation or through some kind of spiritual practice, or just through questioning themselves or exposing themselves to new experiences, or what would you suggest for someone?
A bit of all of it, really. I mean, you've got to go in. You've got to. I mean, I say that I meditate every day, but I don't know what kind of a meditation it is. I just call it going in. But yeah, I go in and I find that still place inside myself, and then I kind of ask for help and guidance. I mean, I see things and I get messages anyway, but that's just me, and I think that other people do, and it just takes practice, but yeah, you've got to go in and do that. So you've got to go in and look at yourself. Also, talking to people, opening up, talking to people you feel close to and that you trust. Have a bit of healing, do some work on clearing any blocks in your energy centers. And also, do cathartic things like writing a journal, you know, to work out what is inside you, what are your feelings, what are your thoughts. Often writing stuff down helps to not just move it out of you, but also helps you formulate what actually is going on, because you've got to put it in words. So rather than it just being rumbling around inside you, you've got to actually make it make sense outside of yourself in words. So that can help. Yeah, I mean, there's everything, even expressing yourself, being creative, expressing your true nature of who you are, your essence, in whatever way that is. And when I say creative, I don't just mean sort of painting or doing music. I mean, you know, if you're into carpentry, making things out of wood, if you're, you know, whatever it is, just be creative, because the creativity is also an expression of our true selves. So, you know, we're kind of born and programmed to go to school and then get a job and do all that
9
nonsense.
to 5
But yeah,
distraction.
yeah. So you want to do the opposite to that, which is, you know, put the self in the center of your life, rather than you know, being part of a kind of system where there isn't any time for you. There isn't any time for you to work on yourself. I think, you know, that's a lot of problem, is people are so busy, life is so fast, that they neglect themselves because they haven't got the time. So yeah, make yourself a priority. And it's not a selfish thing to make yourself a priority, because the more centered, grounded, happy you are, the more you emanate that in the world and to the people around you and your family and stuff. So it's an unselfish thing to do, really.
I agree. That's why, especially this year, I've started trying to put authenticity as like one of the biggest priorities in my life, because I think that's where all happiness, all fulfillment, the best experiences come from, when you're actually who you are.
Yeah, because nobody wants to live a lie. No one wants to be wearing a mask, which a lot of people do. You know, it's not going to make you happy. And also, I always say, truth is love. You know, actually, I would rather have a difficult truth than a beautiful lie. And when we're all truthful and authentic with each other, we know where we are with each other. You know, and pretending to be something we're not, or living up to a kind of narrative of who we should be, which is coming from the wider world, it's just, you know, it's not gonna feed you. It's not gonna nourish your soul. And at the moment, we all need to be nourishing our souls, because we are being, you know, we're living in, you know, unprecedented times. And yeah, I think this is why a lot of people are starting to really question things, you know.
Yeah, I think it can be, you know, people might be hearing this and thinking like, but they don't really know who they are. And I think that can be a scary question, but actually the way you've got to view it is, it's an exciting thing, because really your life is the opportunity to answer that question.
Yeah. And even if you don't know it when you're born, you will, you know, that's part of being here. Who am I? What am I here for?
You don't really know what things you're going to like, or, you know, what's going to interest you, or how you're going to feel about certain things. So I think you're right. You've just got to try things out, do stuff, and not hide from things. And it's sad, because a lot of people avoid things that they should do and that would help them, just because it might be quite psychologically uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think
you got to go to those uncomfortable places and sit with that uncomfortableness. That's the bit that people don't like to do, because we're not.
To be fair, I think that's why, like, I think the easiest thing you can do is journal, because I feel like it helps you become more comfortable with what you're thinking. Because a lot of people may think, oh, I want to be able to do this, and this, and that quick fire thought is like, oh, I should do it, but you know, what if other people are thinking this, or what if this happens, and then it just kind of gets pushed aside. Whereas you write it down, like you say.
Yeah, and also, Oscar, you're right. It helps you to start being able to verbalize what's going on in you by writing it down. And also, your journal doesn't judge you, does it? You can put whatever you want in there, and there's no judgment. So you're right. Journaling's a really good way to sort of start a dialogue, really, with yourself, which then later on, you know, you'll be more comfortable. You'll find the words easier, you know, because you've you've explored them through journaling, so, and explored your feelings and thoughts and everything. So, you know, we're really complex beings, and I think that gets forgotten as well. And you know, so we need to give ourselves the time to unpick ourselves, you know, and have a look at what's there and make sense of it.
It's hard because the way the world is, especially I think me and Oscar could say a bit about, you know, how as a young person there is so many sort of boxes that the world makes you think you have to fill. Pressure from other people our age, there's sort of like a status quo that you feel like you have to follow. And that is so difficult, and like you say, it's uncomfortable, but I think that's the other side to that is where freedom is. And it reminds me of like you talking about how you know, it was difficult for you to come up your shell properly with your healing stuff throughout the years because it was against the status quo. But I think now you're at an age where you're so open about it, and I've seen it just over my lifetime that you've become so much more free. Like I remember, was it 2 years ago or something that you just said to me, Joel, I'm done. You know, I'm done not saying things and not doing things that I feel I need to do. And you're just like, it's just
because I was told about what was going on now. I was told about that in India, so I'd been waiting for something to happen. And when 9/11 happened, I thought that was going to be it, and then it didn't happen. So when the pandemic started, I knew that it was now, and time to stop hiding. Because I mean, I used to have it that I wouldn't even tell people that I was a healer. I was always done on a need to know basis. You know, if I felt like I needed to help someone, then I would say to them, look, actually I do healing if you want to pop round, you know, that kind of thing. If I didn't need to tell people, I wouldn't tell them, because you know, I've just had people take the piss out of me so much when I was younger, you know. But no, the gloves are off now, guys.
It's mad. Like when you say you never advertised anything when you were younger, but you always find jobs getting back to you. I guess it comes back to that fate thing, isn't it? If people are supposed to find you, they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And still now, I've never advertised. I've never advertised, because you know, if I'm very much that way. If people need me, they'll find me. And also, I don't charge. You know, I don't like to charge for healing, because I don't. If someone's found me, they need me. You know what I mean? So, you know, because there's a lot of healers out there that charge a lot of money, and they've gone on a course and they've done their Reiki or whatever, and their Reiki master and all this. I've had no formal training whatsoever, so not that means anything. You know, I think some people are just born with it. You know, but yeah, I work quite differently to other healers. So I've never worked. I'm an anomaly. I can't say it. I'm an anomaly.
I think. Sorry, just one thing quick. With you're saying like people have had their training. I feel like training keeps people enclosed in a box of what they've learned, compared to when you naturally come at it. You know, the sky's the limit if it naturally comes to you. Whereas if it's your training, it's like, oh well, I've got to do it this way. And it's the same with like doctors, physios, nurses. The list goes on really, and they're just confined to that little box of what they've learned instead of expanding.
You're right, Oscar. Totally right. Because I've changed and grown as a healer over the years, and used different methods. You know, from you know, new things have come in that I've learned. I've added them in. You know, so if I'd have been taught in a course or something, then you're just going to stick to what you've been shown. You're not gonna grow in the same way. You know, so that's a very valid point. Yeah.
I think also, people need trust your intuition more with whatever you do, because there's real power to that, I think.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, let's face it, years ago, before we had educational institutions and stuff, they've always been healers, you know. There's always been wise men or shaman. There's always been, you know, medicine women. There's always been, and they would have learned instinctively, you know. I mean, I have guides that talk to me. So I get taught by them effectively, but you know, this is something that's always been with humanity. I think we've just sort of we've lost it, you know, through being guided in a different direction. I mean, I was looking at the Cancer Act of 1939, I think it is, or 36 last night, where, you know, they put through an act in Parliament that it was illegal to treat cancer in any other way than chemo, radiotherapy, and surgery.
Bloody hell.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, this where we are with big pharma has been planned for a long time. You know,
That's mental though as well, because I like due to being more aware and talking to more people, meeting more people. I've known of quite a few people that have had like one example is leukemia, and
yeah,
this lady completely changed her diet, limited. It was all sort of got rid of acids and stuff like that, like acidic foods. It was all sort of alkaline, so there was no opportunity for cancer to grow,
yeah,
basically. And
yeah.
the cancer went. The doctor
Yeah.
said there's nothing we can do.
This is it, Oscar. You can heal. There are many, many ways of coming at. You know, we've all got cancerous cells in us, all of us. It's when there's a kind of a flip out. They're not. There's too many of them, and then you get like a, you know, they cluster together, and then you've got yourself a tumor. But if you create an alkaline environment in your body, cancer cannot grow. So, you know, you have an alkaline diet, and like the lady that you're talking about, it goes because it can't survive in an alkaline environment. So there's some very, very simple things that are just being hidden all the time. And also there's such a fear around cancer that, you know, as soon as somebody's told they've got it, they panic and they go into the fear state, which is then we don't make good decisions when we're in fear, or when we're stressed.
And then the cancer will get worse because you're stressed.
Exactly. And you know, and also a lot of the treatments are so aggressive anyway, you know, that I don't know. I if I ever got a diagnosis of the big C, I would choose to treat myself, you know, because the treatment itself is so aggressive. And
It's probably taken 10 years off your life, the treatment
yeah,
itself, before
yeah,
you
and then it does make you so ill as well. You know, it's a poison at the end of the day. So you're poisoning the cancerous cells, but you're poisoning all of your cells. You know, so yeah, I think that we have to get ourselves out of looking at everything as the only option is pharmaceutical, because there are many, many other options with any illness, you know, with any sickness or disease in your body. So, yeah.
It's super empowering that we have more control. You know, we have the most control over, you know, by what we consume. We can heal ourselves.
Yes, we can. We can heal ourselves through diet and just sort of working with the body, working with the energy, because the body's incredibly intelligent. It wants to fix itself. You know, the healer's just creating the environment for the body to fix itself. It's actually very hard to kill somebody. The body wants to be alive.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how like intuitive and powerful the body is. Like people, it's so easy to sort of forget in the modern lives that we live that, you know, the thing that you're living in is absolutely, we don't even really know how it works.
No, it's a massive, intelligent system, extremely complex, and it knows what to do. And, you know, a lot of what we do in terms of, you know, we're kind of brought up to believe that that's not the case. Do you know what I mean? That the body isn't intelligent, and all of that is all part of kind of hiding ourselves from ourselves, which the system wants to do. It doesn't want people to know how powerful and how good we are as beings, at manifesting as well, and things like that. You know, they don't want you to know that you're a powerful being. They want you to feel, you know, insignificant and, you know, without lacking in power. So it's all part of, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth coming out now about so many things. And this is just a part of that, you know, of knowing our true nature and what incredible beings we really are, you know, and what abilities we can have if they're just, you know, just kind of revealed to us. So, I mean, you and Eve, your sister, you know, you've been brought up in my house, so you've kind of been brought up with this whole vibe. But most people aren't, you know, they're just not. They're brought up, they're brought up to believe that if you're sick, you go to Big Pharma, and if, that we don't have any control or power over our bodies, that, even telling every single cell in your body, like at the moment, with what we're living, we've got chemtrails, we've got stuff in the water, we've got, it's just, we're being bombarded. So when I go to sleep now, I do a meditation where I tell every single cell of my body that it knows how to defend itself from, EMFs and heavy metals and this and that. And I tell all my cells, you know what to do, because there's also the placebo effect, which is if you tell yourself something, a third of people will, that's the statistics with the placebo effect, is a third will, respond, even if it's nothing there, because just in the belief that there is something there,
Yeah, it's amazing.
So work with your own consciousness and your own mind, and tell yourself that you have your cells have that intelligence, and tell them, to detox every night.
I think
Oh, sorry, you go, Joe.
Well, I was going to say, I think the biggest shift that I've experienced over the past, year and a bit that's changed who I am is, realizing the nature of who I am. And that really, like, Joel Clifton's just, like, even is that, it's just it's an act, it's a name, it's a person that goes around. But the real me is the person that's sort of observing Joel Clifton inside. And that is, like, when we were talking about meditation earlier, and you were talking about, like, how can people be more authentic and find out who they are, is really, sitting with yourself and seeing how it feels to just, like, not have to play an act in public, and seeing who you are when all that is taken away, when it's just you and your own body and your own breath, and you're just sort of observing life. What were you going to say, Oscar?
I was just going to say, like, the power of thought is, it's a proper thing, like, I've read, I might have been in Jordan Peterson's book. There was, I can't remember if it was or not, but that basically there was like this experiment that was put out where you had a group of sick patients split, and you had one group that were being prayed for, and one group that weren't being prayed for, and the differences in recovery skyrocketed for the people that were being prayed for, and that stuck with me, to be fair, because it's like, that's just thought at the end of the day. That's just, please make sure this guy gets better.
Powerful thoughts. I mean, thoughts are energy, though, aren't they? I mean, if you think about it, when you have a thought, your synapses fire, which is electrical pulses. Our thoughts are actually energy. So if you're sending out good thoughts to somebody, who's to say that their energy body doesn't pick that up? I mean, I think it does. Well, I know it does, because I do absent healing, and like you've just said, the prayer groups work. It proves that prayer does work. Well, that's just very, very, that is thought with intention, and thoughts are energy. Thoughts are energy. People don't really understand the energy systems and how they all work with subtle energy, because people can't see it. Human beings like to see, they want the evidence, so the evidence has to come in controlled experiments like the one you're talking about, Oscar. But the evidence is there about the power of the consciousness and the power of thought, the power of your mind.
I mean, you can see a thought written across someone's face. Do you know what I mean? Like, you see people out, you can see people that are thinking happily, you can see people that are angry. You can see it. It changes their physiology just because it's just that energy in their mind, in their consciousness. It changes who they are and how they're living.
And you can feel it. I mean, if you walk into a room, right, and there's someone in that room and they're in a really bad mood, you can feel it.
Yeah.
Before they've even opened their mouth, you think, oh, blimey. You know what I mean? So we do it all, but we do it all kind of subconsciously, and it needs to be brought into the conscious. And, because what we pay attention to grows, So again, that's thought. If you don't give your thought to something, you don't give your energy to it. If you give your thought to it, you give your energy to it, and it's going to grow. So it's like with dreams. People say to me, oh, I don't dream. Well, if you start writing down your dreams, you will get more dreams. You do dream every night, but you're not going to remember unless you start paying more attention. When you start writing your dreams down, then you suddenly remember more. And there's a lot to be said for, listening to your dreams, because that's your subconscious talking to you. But yeah, I mean, everybody dreams, but if you're going to remember them more if you write them down, because you're giving them that attention.
Yeah, dreams are unbelievable. They are. It's so weird. Like it's such a normal thing that people have sort of normalized, but it's actually mental that you go to sleep at night and then you can live kind of stories and have these experiences, and then you wake up.
That are really vivid. And,
Yeah, and there's
you know,
always some kind of symbolic meaning there for me, especially when they're proper vivid ones.
oh
And
yeah,
that's
and
crazy.
if you write them down, often when I started writing them down, and then I'd look at them retrospectively, like look back on them, because sometimes I didn't understand them at the time, but you know, I would look back and think, oh my God, you know, that I understand now what that dream was telling me, because your dreams will speak to your subconscious, will speak to you in its own language. So it's learning the language of your own dreams, you know. Same in your meditations, you know, when you see things or hear things or get a word or whatever, it's learning the language of how your guides speak to you, because they're not using you know, they're not using words. So, you know, it's kind of like a different language almost that you have to decipher.
And when you say guides, do you mean like sort of beings in the other realm, in the spiritual realm, looking after us? People like our ancestors, or just energies of the universe, or God, or what? Like, you know what I mean? Are they all of those things in one? Like,
I have a few. So I've got one that's been with me since, well, I remember her the most from when I was young. And she's kind of my main one. And then I have 3 or 4 others that have consistently been around me. And yes, I also have both my grandmothers with me, and I also have a relative from further back that I've never met. So yeah, and I do. I must look like a weirdo sometimes, because they do butt in sometimes when I'm just talking to people. They heckle, but yeah. Over the years, my connection with them's got stronger and stronger. You know, I didn't see them till I was in my late 20s, although I was aware of them before.
do you think that this place where they're from is where sort of we'll go and we die, and it's where we were before? Is this like, you know, the place before and after the Earth realm kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's when we get into the quantum stuff, really. Because I call when I'm working, I call it the quantum fields. I've called it that for years. And then when the quantum thing sort of came up a bit more over the last few years, it's been helpful, because it's sort of given me a language. But yeah, I do. I think, you know, we are energy. We go back into energy. I see them in sort of human forms, but that's just the way that they're showing me themselves. But yeah, I think when we leave this body, we kind of, I think we go home, wherever that is, and have a rest and have a look at what the next life, what do I need to learn, you know, what do I want to do this time, and come back again. And some of my guides have been here in the past, like my grandmothers. Others I don't think have ever incarnated here. They're more, you know, I think there are different dimensions, that's what I think. And they're not sort of placed. It's very difficult to explain things, because we are so used to a material world, and when you're out of your body, it's energetic. Everything's energy, and it's kind of it's difficult to explain even how I experience things or see things when I'm there. But it's hard for people to comprehend not being physical, you know, because when you're not physical, you're a consciousness. You're going to have a different way of communicating with whoever you come across when you're there, you know.
Yeah,
it's difficult to explain.
I think I do. I think some things can't have a concrete explanation, and I think embracing the mystical actually opens up another spectacular part of life. And I think if people are listening to this and they're not fully believing in what we're saying, my advice would be, you don't have to completely believe it, but just be open to it, because what's the worst that can happen? You know.
And I think when I was told this years ago, that when science and mysticism marry, that will be the next great leap in evolution for man.
That's a good quote. Someone should write that down.
Yeah.
Bloody
And
hell.
That one, and
science
what's
and
the other one? What's the other one that I said earlier? There was another quote that was very good.
Oh, making friends and giving them a hug is a way to solve every problem or something like that.
But no, that was one as well. But no, it was like I'd rather have a
Oh yeah.
something truth than a beautiful
yeah,
lie.
I'd rather have an ugly truth than a
That's-
beautiful lie.
Yeah.
Something to live by. Now
Yeah.
to sort of close this off, Mum, I'm very grateful for you being here. But I
My
want to.
pleasure.
I think every time me and Oscar get a guest on here, I want to ask them this one specific question, and we'll see what we can learn as we go. So, if you could go back in time and speak to your 17, 18-year-old self, like the ages of me and Oscar, what would be the one piece of advice, or one of many that you'd give to that person, to the younger you? What would you say about life?
Be more confident in yourself.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I didn't have any belief in myself. I didn't, I'd had quite a tough childhood, and I was pretty lost, but I didn't have, I think my self-esteem and my confidence was very low. And if there's anything that I think has been helped me in my life, is just to be more confident and have, belief in myself. And I wouldn't change anything in my life, anything, even the bad times, just as much as the good times. I wouldn't change anything. But I just think, I look back at me at 17, 18, and I just see a girl that had no self-confidence, no self-belief. And that's the bit that I had to find, I think, in those 10 years between coming back from India and meeting Doug and starting to do my spiritual work, was, if you don't have any confidence, you don't go for things, and that can hold you back. So my advice to me as a 17, 18-year-old would be, have some confidence and belief in yourself, girl,
Wow. That's beautiful to hear, Mum.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, guys. Really, really honoured to be on your podcast, and I love what you guys are doing. So excellent.
Yeah, well, I'll leave a link in the description to your YouTube channel if people want to check.
Oh yeah, we're having a bit of a discrepancy with YouTube at the moment, so a lot of our videos are down, but hopefully we'll sort it and put them back up.
Well, you can just send me any links and I'll whack them in the description.
Yeah, I'll put some links up to our Telegram groups as well, because we've got a little bit more freedom to say what we want to say on there.
Cool. That's great. And Oscar, thank you again for being with me.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks ever so much.
And people, we will see you next month with another one. But until then, be an anomaly, and then we'll see you next time. See you in a bit.
Bye.